Okay, so now on the wrap-up session, we're going to have an industry panel. Where are my panel members? Come on up, come on up. No, the exciting part is that if we did this a few years ago, it would be a fairly empty stage. So this is super exciting that we have 4 industry participants who can talk about developing drugs for ALD. So really exciting news, and thank you for joining. All right, so let's do this. If you can start, all of you guys should be thinking about what questions you would like to have answered, but we'll start with just a brief background. If each of you could kindly just give us a 3-minute intro, your name, your company, and what is your company either doing right now in ALD, planning to do, or just thinking about. So just briefly on that. And when we say ALD, of course, just to clarify, cerebral, AMN, women, men, just the whole adrenal insufficiency, just to specify, or if you're doing everything. So I don't know, Patrick, if you want to start, and then we'll go down.
Sure, happy to do that. So I'm Patrick Flight, here from Bluebird Bio. I'm the program lead for our ALD program. We are working on cerebral ALD. We are currently investigating the LentiD gene therapy in that area, and our hope is that we can work towards a regulatory submission target for LentiD next year. So that's where we're moving right now. This is my first time at ALD Connect, so I also wanted to just take this time to say thank you to the organizers for pulling this together. It's been a really interesting opportunity to get to know everyone. It's really great to see the patient panel and to see all of you here. In terms of what we're thinking about moving forward, I think what we're really focused on right now is getting LentiD across the finish line. We really want to get it filed, get it submitted. The focus of that is the pediatric CALD form, but I think there are other things we are thinking about. We're thinking about collaborations and registries, and I know that I've had the opportunity to talk with Amber and Kathleen a little bit about that. We, of course, also have our long-term follow-up study of our patients who were treated with LentiD that we hope will yield some insights over 15 years of follow-up after that treatment about how the disease progresses. And then we're just interested in hearing what others are talking about and how we can potentially collaborate with them. So thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Alec Lowe. I come from Sanofi, a big pharmaceutical company, but I come from part of Sanofi that was called Genzyme Corporation, and some of you may know this is a company which is very active in rare disorders, and especially disorders with neurological manifestations. And our connection, our support of ALD Connect is actually long-standing. People who came well before me formed connection to Florian and ALD Connect, and this continues. Our interest in rare disorders, especially disorders with neurological manifestation, is in biomarkers domain. And this is how we can contribute. My group specifically does metabolomics and lipidomics work, and this is why I was asking so many specific questions. So my understanding is there is a very big need for good biomarkers for this disease, to detect it early, to evaluate efficacy of the drug, to make a decision whether a patient needs bone marrow transplant. So hopefully by joining effort, we can find those markers and benefit the community.
I'm Asif Parker. I'm Vice President of Clinical Development at Swan Bio. Swan Bio is in preclinical stage developing gene therapy in adults with adrenomyeloneuropathy. I think I have the shortest introduction.
Do you want to give any sense of timeline, clinical trials, or anything, or is that too vague?
We are working on we are exploring what can be done in adults with AMN. We're working on preclinical models of how, what dose, what assessments, and all that goes into the preclinical stage. So I do not have timelines right now, but hopefully by next ALD Connect, I will have a better idea of where we are and what programs will roll out for the community.
Yeah, you gave me much more time. I'm Uwe Meyer, Chief Medical Officer of Minorix Therapeutics. So before I start, what we are doing is I really wanted to thank you and all the patients who told us their stories. I think that helps us stay grounded. So we tend to drift away sometimes into abstract designs, flowcharts, tick boxes, regulatory requirements. But I think it's bringing us back to the real world, and I know there are several patients here in the room who are participating in our study. Now, what are we doing? Exactly 2 years ago, we started a double-blind, placebo-controlled study in male adult AMN, and that study is progressing smoothly. So we had actually last week, we had the first patient who was recruited. He's now rolled over into the extension phase, so it's a 2 years double-blind phase. And we know that several other patients are reaching that finish line very soon this month. That means also that in a year from now, when the last patient was recruited a year ago, we have reached our finish line. We can complete the double-blind phase. And we are planning to reveal results by the end of next year. So that bears fruit, and that would not have been possible with your motivated participation in the study. So thank you for your motivation, enthusiasm, and please stay motivated to complete the study. The reward, quotation marks, is the extension phase after you completed the double-blind part. Yeah, what else are we doing? We are also running a parallel study in Friedreich's ataxia. And both studies, the AMN study and the Friedreich's ataxia study, was actually recruited ahead of schedule, so we were faster than we planned. Usually patient recruitment is a source of high concern, and you get into panic if you don't find the patients. So I think that would have not been possible also with an active and motivated dialogue between us and the patients and patient associations. Then look into the future. We are thinking of a third indication, that is, can we treat boys with CALD? So we are looking into young boys from the first moment they have cerebral lesions in the MRI until they may receive stem cell transplant. That is, of course, a delicate thing and requires a lot of thinking. First of all, the time slot must be variable, so we cannot hold up or prohibit any other standard of care for the boys, so it requires a lot of flexibility. And we are looking, can we really achieve some benefit for the boys in this time window between first discovery of lesions and indication to transplant, with the hope we can delay or even avoid transplant. That would be the ultimate goal. We are a little bit further progressed in discussions in Europe than in the US. The FDA is not the easiest health authority to deal with, but I hope I'll be back to the meeting of the Elisa Seega Foundation, and that will be in January, so I hope I can give you more details on that study.
Wonderful. We embrace your attendance and your help with working on a disease that we're obviously all passionate about, finding better treatments. So just to clarify, since we're all optimistic about your trial, at the next ALD Connect, will you be in the headlights with results, or is that too soon? Is it end of year, not like October?
Well, I cannot say so.
Oh, you can't? Okay.
We have the last patient out, I think, end of October of
So
next
it's tight.
year. And it is really not only on us, so it requires what we call data cleaning. So we have to go back to the sites if there are missing data, contradictions in the data, and really depends on the speed of response back from the site. So we are doing everything to chase them. So if you did the ALD Connect meeting like 23rd of December, I think we could, but
If you get fortunate and the data cleaning works well, we'll find a spot for you no matter what. So with that in mind, with the challenges that you're facing, if I can ask each of you maybe to address what could everyone in this room and outside this room do to help you be more successful in advancing treatments for any of these diseases, or make you more wildly successful than you are right now, and make you want to throw all your resources and anybody else you know in industry at this disease? What could we be doing to drive that kind of change? If you want to start, we'll go reverse order this time. Sorry.
I've spoken a lot, but I mean, there's one topic that is dear to my heart. I think that I've also recommended that at one of the last ISC meetings. So I would be happy maybe to have a panel to foster mutual understanding, so patients understand regulatory requirements better, the constraints that we have inevitably. I gave a presentation like 2 years ago at IIC about designs, and I tried to get the message over, why do we need a 2-year placebo control? So that is very hard to accept for patients, to take placebo, participate in the study for 2 years, maybe for no benefit. We discussed several design options, and my conclusion was that the others are really not likely successful. So why have we do we do that? Or another example, we are following patients on social media a little bit, and there was one day when we changed the protocol from single EKG to triplicate EKG. There was nothing insidious behind, it was just following an FDA recommendation. And we saw a patient comment on social media saying, oh, now the doctors changed the ECG to triplicate, so there must be a dangerous thing with the drug. That is absolutely not the case, but it was a big misunderstanding. So things like that, so that we understand each other better, and I hope that can also keep patients in the study.
No, I think you gave us an idea for definitely an agenda item next meeting. Well noted.
Yeah,
Yes.
so my comment is to the patients and patient community here. I think they have done a wonderful job of staying engaged, and my comment would be, my suggestion would be to continue to participate and stay engaged. What we need for industry, for drugs to be developed, for industry to do more trials is more better and larger natural history studies, and better participation and more engaged patient community, so that we can do a trial that are successful, that are in compliant and without any missing data. So I think that would be my message. Now, one point that I was saying is that I have seen in other communities is that do not get discouraged by failed studies, or more than fail, if you do not hear back the results. They will continue to come and trickle in. It's just that without thinking about that, just stay engaged and continue to participate. Thank you.
My response would be sort of related to response of my colleague. I think in terms of drug discovery and early development, biomarkers are very much needed for that as well. And if we want to have more programs, we need better access to patient samples. And unfortunately, this is very difficult to come by. And I see a lot of patients here. You are not only a source of knowledge for us, but potentially our partners in doing biomarker discovery studies. And if you volunteer and participate in the studies, donate samples to biobank. If you go to physical exam and you have your sample drawn, sometimes leftovers are discarded. Maybe there is a way to donate them to do research. And I'm going to say something. You probably won't say hi to me in the hallway after that, but there are people who succumb to the disease, and it may be a lot to ask, but these tissues from patients who passed away may be benefiting somebody who you love more than yourselves, your children. So if you make this decision, please consider, because it will be really great benefit for people who develop new drugs, because they need to, for any disease, especially rare disease, it's very difficult, but you need those markers to develop the screen, to monitor efficacy of your drug in animal model and then in the patient, because you want to collect samples that you can collect from the samples, and you want to find those markers which are present in samples that you can collect easily. And in order to do that, you have to look at the tissues that are being damaged.
Thank you. No, I mean, it's a difficult conversation, but one that is very critical and needs to be had. So we appreciate you putting it out there.
Great. Thank you. So, I mean, I think from my perspective, a lot of the work that is already going on and that we've heard about today is what we need, right? So a lot of the bases are being covered. I think about the work Elise has done and what we heard about arrivederci, did I say that correctly? I don't know, ALD, in the newborn screening efforts, right? That's gonna generate not only the identification of patients and help them, but also help the community understand longitudinally what this disease looks like and how to intervene earlier and how you can get better outcomes that way. So, you know, newborn screening is huge, I think, for us understanding how the disease works, and I think people coming to meetings like this where you can share best practices about how to implement that and, you know, how to talk to governments and how to talk to agencies and how to get that done is huge. Also some of the advanced work we hear on imaging, right, that's also going to be really important as we, you know, hopefully go to a place where, and I think it was, sorry, I'm totally blanking, from Minnesota. Why am I blanking on his name? Troy, thank you. Who talked about how, he's going to be mad at me about that, about how, you know, survival isn't necessarily good enough an endpoint, and looking at some of these advanced imaging techniques and trying to intervene earlier and trying to get to them earlier so that you can actually preserve a lot of the function. So I think it's sharing of data, implementing newborn screening, and then I would underscore some of the comments that were made about, you know, participation in registries and the kind of things where we can collect that information will be really helpful.
Okay, if I can be just a little provocative. So we've heard cerebral ALD, AMN, but childhood cerebral ALD. So if I can put Uwe and Patrick, since you guys were talking about cerebral ALD, as we know, there's challenges because there is kind of a standard of care right now, so how do you enroll? What about adult cerebral ALD, which, as we know, it's a really difficult area, and in some ways there's more morbidity and mortality associated with the allotransplants right now. Have you guys considered it? Is that just like, let's do one thing at a time? I don't know, Patrick, if you want to touch it first.
Yeah, happy to touch it. So, yeah, clearly a difficult area, right? And certainly tough for the patients, and I think we certainly have thought about it. Right now, we're focused on kind of demonstrating the risk-benefit profile in the population that we're treating. I can't predict exactly where we'll go with it, but, you know, it's something that we definitely think about. And, you know, I can definitely, as we hopefully move through this process of submission, you know, update when we have more thoughts on where we want to go next.
Yeah.
You're in a better position than we are, so you have a treatment available once it happens. I mean, we are following our patients in the study with annual MRIs with gadolinium, so we can see what happens. Of course, we hope it never happens, but it is very difficult to enroll into a prospective study because no one knows when it happens, if it happens, and we just would have to follow maybe patients for several years to find a case, yeah, whether we can prevent it or not. So that is currently the only thing that we can do. So we focus on boys currently.
Before I go on with my questions, I mean, this is the last session. I want to make sure people don't leave here without asking their questions that they want. I mean, you have a wonderful opportunity. You have 4 very talented individuals who are working on the disease you care about. So here's your chance.
First of all, I'm in the Minorex trial, so thank you for, I think I was 150 out of 150, so. What would be the outcome, the ideal outcome that you're looking for? And maybe just take us through how did this all start? Like, what was the genesis of this launching, like the process?
Well, I think we are modest in our expectations. So we think with this study, we hope that we can show delay of progression. I think it would be too good to believe that we can stop it or even revert it. And we are open to seeing that, but I think let's be modest and say that we can delay progression compared to natural progression. So that's the outcome. What was your second question?
How did it all start? Like, what was the genesis of this?
Then you're asking me things before I joined the company. So what I know about the history of the company is it started actually out on work on pioglitazone, which you know is an approved treatment for diabetes. We bought ourselves into research from academia in Barcelona. Later on, the company decided that we would pursue a specific metabolite of pioglitazone because that metabolite has a couple of advantages. So first of all, the metabolite is number 4 in their terminology, is having a less complicated spectrum of metabolism. So it has just active metabolite, whereas pioglitazone has several which are active or not. And the second advantage is that it has a better penetration into the central nervous system. So then we deviated from that path and followed with this compound.
We have a bunch of questions, so who's got the mic?
Hi, I'm a parent. My husband and I, our son has ALD. I appreciate that industry is investing in studying this disease. So we hear about medications or treatments that are in development for cerebral ALD, adult male AMN. With the it's MIN 102 study, is that the product it's being studied? If you see positive results with the study in men, is there any plan to study in women as well?
Yes, we do that immediately after we have results. I've been asked that question very often. So first thing is we cannot put females and males together in one study because symptomatology is different, progression is different. It would just dilute or disturb the results. I also said in an ideal world we would start everything in parallel, children, males, females. Being a very small company, having cautious investors, they were not willing to put all the money into a huge program. But what we will do is the moment we have results, we will go back to health authorities and ask what else has to be done to get approval for female ALD. I don't hope and I don't believe it will be another 2-year double-blind study with a placebo control, because I think symptoms and progression is so similar that you can extrapolate from one to the other. So I hope it will just be a smaller piece of work that we have to do to get approval. Actually, we are planning for success, so we are planning now already what we would have to do, but then once we have the results, we say yes, we go ahead or not.
In terms of helping with the biomarkers or helping you with research, how do families opt in for giving you like blood samples or any other type of information you need from us? And would it be a possibility maybe to have a nurse come to one of these events and draw blood, or let people opt in somehow for research?
There is actually a company that I'm familiar with. It's called Sanguine Bio. They are actually sending a phlebotomist who collects samples from patients in their houses and ship them to the customers. So I am sure there are others. So I think that is a possibility. Also, if you go for annual examination and you have your blood drawn for other type of testing, maybe we could somehow make arrangements for leftover samples to be donated to biobanks for people who are conducting studies.
I think we should take home that action. If I'm looking at my other ALD Connect board members, like we should take this on as an action to give guidance to patients who are willing to do it. Like, okay, what do you do when you go to the doctor? So thank you for raising that. We have another question.
If I may just
Yeah.
add something, maybe ALD Connect somehow can be a coordinator of collecting such samples.
I have a two-part question. So we are parents of a patient as well, child. So one question is the companies that are working on AMN and they're separate companies, are you both interacting with each other to find out what's working, what's not working within those segments so that you could see maybe alternatives to your own process? And then two, if right now the Minnow 102 and other things are there to delay the onset of some of the symptoms for AMN, would this drugs be safe enough that everyone could administer it? Two, that we could take, or the ones that could be affected could take it before any symptoms do arrive so they could start taking it in their 20s? And what you guys think about the longer term effects of those and the safety of that for a mass stream?
Yeah, regarding the first question, sharing, so we are all participating in the Industry Advisory Council that meets 4 times a year. And we have had discussions about collaborative projects, so there is space where we can collaborate without infringing with any confidential company data or sensitive information. So we are talking about pooling of data, sharing research into biomarkers, etc. So that is ongoing. The other question was, can you treat patients prophylactically with Min 102? We don't know that. Of course, it is a big question. Can you expose, for example, children before age 2, so children that have been diagnosed from birth through newborn screening? But that is also a delicate thing to discuss with health authorities. So you would expose 60% of the children for no purpose because 40% develop CALD. So you would dose them the other 60% for nothing until they may develop AMN later in life. So that's a question between risk and benefit, and it's the same for patients who have the gene, they have the mutation, but are asymptomatic. It is a huge population, and again, it's a risk-benefit discussion. Do expose them with side effects, etc.
Sorry, from my understanding, and I could be wrong, that I thought most people that develop cerebral ALD develop it earlier in stages in life. So most of the people that I've spoken to that have symptoms with AMN are at least, let's say, 20 years old or older, and in fact more so on the later side. So I'm stating at like 20 years old, if people with the biomarkers of ALD but don't show any symptoms and they're 20 years old at that point, would that be a safe event?
Well, so far with Min 102, I don't see any prohibitive side effects or no serious safety flags to do that. Yeah, it's just a question again of risk versus benefit.
Thank you.
Yeah, I see if I know you're.
Yeah, I think that to your first question, companies who are working in the same patient population, we do work. I mean, Wei is a good friend, and we often talk about what assessments would be good or how the studies should be designed. There was another example is there's another drug, high-dose biotin was tested in patients with AMN by a company named MedDay, and after completion of their trial, they have shared their data with us so that we can look at it, learn from that data, and plan and design future studies. So we are good friends there.
I have a quick question about biomarkers. Whether there is interest in the concept of composite or digital biomarkers. Specifically, here there's been very interesting data from the omics and microRNA with very strong signals between phenotypes. Specifically looking at AMN so far, there doesn't seem to be one biomarker that has stuck out and performed well longitudinally. And our traditional statistics approach is in stepwise regression. You know, what can we account for additionally in this variability to improve this biomarker as a signal? There's this landscape that's evolving, which is this composite biomarker of multiple from cross domains, some metabolic data, some imaging data to create a number that is some representation of the patient. Is there interest there? Is there interest on the FDA side that you know about? You know, how would it be a worthwhile avenue of investigation to look into that?
I think this is my question, and my answer is definitely yes. I have participated in studies where different neurological disorders were evaluated, and typically they are evaluated by some sort of scoring system. And you have seen some examples here. And what is striking is all these numbers are integers. So there is a score of 2, and then there is score of 3, but there is definitely a 2.5 and 2.4. And these scoring systems are less sensitive than what I would like them to be when I do a biomarker studies, because study design and a good correlation system is a key to success of metabolomics or lipidomics study. And just because we as scientists also need to have such systems, I actually recently, I was searching for some sort of more precise system to evaluate patient conditions, so we could correlate our biomarker trends to more exact scores. And I came across company MC10, which developed this small sensors, which are patches. They are put in several places on human body, and they are doing 24 hours complete biometric surveillance. So when the patient sleeps, they can measure gait, they can measure movement during sleep, they can measure activity of the person, because one of the findings that people had is that if there are some restrictions, movement restrictions, patient typically moves less, right, at their homes. So that can be valuable parameters. But there was an example given to me that there was a lady affected by a neurological disorder. She participated in a clinical trial, and she actually has improved, but she started moving less. It turned out that she really loved knitting, and she couldn't do it for a very long time. And then finally she gained this ability, and she was sitting on the couch for the entire day knitting. So to capture all these differences in behavior, we need more precise system. And this company, MC10, is actually talking about digital biomarkers. So I think it's there. A lot of people are interested, and there is a lot of innovation in the field. So I think this is the future.
Can I add? So a short answer is yes. I think about it every day. It is an important point. But what caveat I'll say is that you need larger sample size. You need larger size to understand those relations, to develop a composite endpoint or composite marker. And that means multiple institutions has to work together, and somebody has to put those data together. Just understanding those challenges. But I think when we're developing drugs, this is one thing we often think about, and we do those analyses.
there was a question in the back of the room.
Hello. Yes. I was just talking about things that we can do. You said that we could take a blood test and we make sure that it goes towards you to do tests and everything. And is there how do we go about doing that? And is there anything more that we can do as ALD patients?
So I think when this was raised earlier, the ALD Connect board, I'm looking at Florian who's sitting here, I'm sure there's other ones around, I'm not seeing it. We're going to take that as an action to think through how we can facilitate that, and that way we can inform the broad, I mean, we're thrilled that there's this ongoing conversation and everyone wants to help, so we feel like we need to do some brainstorming to facilitate the easiest way to pull it all together. But thank you for wanting to help with that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Are there other questions? There was one other one because some people submitted, what do you call them, index cards. And one of the questions was relative to learning from other disease areas. So I know it would be difficult in industry to repurpose a drug that's owned by someone else, but in terms of clinical trial design, for example, there's been some recent success in Friedreich's ataxia. Maybe you can talk about how you leverage some of the other, I don't, if any of you have looked at ways to leverage some of the other correlates and apply to ALD drug development. And if not, that's okay.
I think there are a lot of good lessons to learn from looking at other clinical trials and developments happening in the field in general. Taking few examples of biomarkers, you look at the integrity of exons and how it is assessed using few biomarkers in multiple sclerosis, and you can say, can I apply those to ALD? Look at, and in same wise, if with multiple sclerosis, you look at the gait assessments and you copy those to ALD and see maybe we can learn from there. I think there are good learnings that happen, and I don't know if you want to say about Friedreich ataxia and what similarities there.
Yeah, I think one of the things is really dialogue to patient and patient associations, and that has helped us greatly to find patients and to motivate patients to participate in clinical studies. Another thing is that we're also pursuing specific exploratory examinations. In our study in AMN, University of Amsterdam, they're doing some specific spinal cord imaging. In Paris, they're doing some specific cerebral imaging on white matter integrity. And these are methods that are also used in other indications. So we are using that.
All right, I know we're a little bit over, but just the final thing, it's wonderful to hear all you're doing. Could we accelerate it? So while everybody always wants to come up with a better design, a better preclinical study, a better model, we have to decide when good is good enough. And I'm sure anybody here would be very happy to come to your offices, talk to your staff, because it's easy. I mean, I'm in the field. It's easy to just be in your lab and thinking, oh, I just have to do one more assay validation. I just have to do one more. But if you have the patient sitting in front of you saying, I'm waiting, I really need this, I'm waiting, it just kind of changes the conversation at all. So I guess I just want to close by saying, ask any one of us to come to your offices, talk to your scientists, and just kind of generate that sense of urgency. I know you feel it, but there's a bigger organizations behind you guys, because it's that there's equally and a lot more people than in this room that are desperately waiting for everything that you're working on right now. So please do leverage us to continue with that sense of urgency and see how we can help. I know how committed everyone on this panel is. There's organizations behind you, and we want to help on that. So I'm offering anyone here, and is there anything else we can do to drive that sense of urgency? Because you hear it in the questions. People are waiting.
Yeah, I was going to say that Uwe raised a point early on that going to FDA and communicating with them the urgency and the need in this field, and bringing up that can trigger or can facilitate more of our interactions with them. Understanding the AMN disease is slowly progressive disease. It takes longer time to show an effect. And so the use of biomarkers or use of these early readings through assessments that are not fully validated become very important, but then there's a regulatory hurdle. I think helping there is one point I can add.
Okay. Yeah.
Make a comment. Today I represent not only my company, Sanofi, but also another community that joins academia and industry and state organizations involved in healthcare and physicians. And this is a series of conferences, Clinical Pharmaceutical Solutions Through Analysis, CPSA. And this group of people formed a very strong bond to ALD Connect. We actually had some patient speakers, and Florian and Kathleen and a few other doctors from MGH came and participated in the conference, which actually one of them is taking place in this very hotel, and it will be in beginning of May of 2020. So I invite you to come and participate, and if you want to do a presentation on biomarkers, on unaddressed medical need, there will be a lot of people from big pharmaceutical companies who will be there and will be happy to work with you. Also, at the beginning of the conference, we will do 5K walk in Western Park to benefit ALD Connect. And I invite you to participate in that, and that will be done through CPSA Charitable Foundation.
Thank you for that advertisement. No,
And
that
we
was
will be
great.
happy to sign any state petition as non-profit organization.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
Can I
Steve.
add?
Yeah.
I would also add that leverage the resources that are here. They're a very experienced team here. There's other very experienced industry representatives here. So as a patient, if you want to bring up what symptoms and complaints are most relevant to you that you want industry to address, come and share with us, because if we do not know, if we will only be look at the assessments that we think are relevant. So we continue to look at gait only or certain ones. So as a patient community, it is very important for you to raise your voice and let us know where you feel the most important need is. In last industry panel, I met women with AMN, and they made a very strong, they raised the point that women are, symptoms are very severe in women, and women should be part of the clinical trials. Same wise to scientists and clinicians here, I'll say, again, use us. We know how to develop drugs. If you're looking at a test, ask us how can that become a good biomarker, how can you validate it, and if you're looking at a certain clinical assessments, we can help you develop a good endpoint from that assessment through a little bit of tweaking that. If you have working on a molecule, help us how can we bring that to clinic, and these meetings are good opportunities to get us and have that non-formal discussions. So use these resources.
Okay, before we close, any more questions? We all thank you very much and embrace all the work you're doing and appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to close out the day and thank everyone. I feel very invigorated to have heard all this new knowledge and have all these perspectives, but more than anything, I think it's the people in the room. And if I may say, you should all come back tomorrow, but for those of you who have other plans, remember to come next year and invite new friends and new people, because I do think with every new collaborator there's a new opportunity, and we all wear multiple hats, and I think we're hopefully getting to a point where we're sort of overcoming the divisions here, understanding that we're all scientists, patients studying themselves, industry people like Ala, who's probably one of the most academic people I know. And so let's understand that we have more in common than divides us. And I look forward to tomorrow. I think it's going to be a great day.